Are you ready?
Yeah.
Here's a quote from a recent conference. School should be both a window and a mirror where students will be able to see the world outside of themselves while reflecting on their own individuality. Students should not have to choose between the culture of the school and the culture of their family. Reflecting on your high school experiences, could you offer some insight for the young men here today? Was there an educator in your life who made a difference, a coach, a mentor, someone who inspired you? We'll start with Professor Foster.
I was going to flip that to my brothers. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see people properly trained here. Y'all know how to answer back. I grew up in Philadelphia. I went to elementary school, junior high school, and high school there. I'll direct this to the mentor. If it's not too corny, I was in the Boy Scouts, and I had to be sponsored. My family couldn't afford to pay for any of the things that Boy Scouts had to pay for. And the gentleman who was my scoutmaster, Mr. Roebuck, was indeed one of my most prominent mentors. Not a very tall man, but you could tell he was ex-military, always stood with his back ramrod straight, spoke to us like he said, gentlemen, and he spoke to us whenever he addressed us. And he had a way of something I have yet to master. I'm still trying to master it. He had a way of saying something to us that would make us think that he didn't like us, but it would bounce off that bone in your head to make you say, I'm going to show him. Because whenever we said, we want to do something, all you boys probably never be able to do that, but give it a try. I would just hear it as a challenge. I never heard it as a put down. And as a direct result of him, I have to say a lot of the things I am today, I am because of him. I wish I knew where he was. I wish I knew if he was still alive, because I want to shake him hand, take him out to dinner, introduce him to my kids, introduce him to the young men in my neighborhood, because he was a role model beyond par. There's no question. He took his life experiences and shared us with us young men. As a direct result, I learned photography from a local gentleman in our neighborhood who did photography for many years. He promoted me to a religion award that I hadn't even thought he knew I was very interested in religion and reading. He was just very precise, and I think of him often.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So I went to school in Hartford, Connecticut, and I remember she was my 6th grade teacher. Her name was Barbara Thornton. And Miss Thornton was Afrocentric. Miss Thornton wore kente cloth. In her classroom, I'll never forget, there was this huge mural of Tutankhamun on the wall, his sarcophagus, the gold. And she would, all of her classes, she would teach us about African history. And so we would learn about Africa before slavery, and that was super important to her, that she imparted, the civilization that we created, the education systems that Africa created. More than the education that she gave us that way, Ms. Thornton looked at us. I went to a predominantly Black and Hispanic school. Wasn't a ton of money, but she looked at us, each of us, as if we were special. She treated us like we were destined for things greater than what we saw right outside of our windows. And I think it was that look, it was that devotion, along with, she also had this program that we were all a part of that was called Freedom Fighters. And she would invite leaders from the community directly into the school to kind of be our mentors for the day. We would show them around the school. There would be special programming around Black History Month, and we got to connect with them. So not only did she feed us every day with who she was and how she saw us, but she also gave us access to people of color and leaders of color that were in our very community. And I thank her because she opened my eyes to know that there were role models that were around if I looked and if I opened myself up to those opportunities. And that same look that I saw her give us was the same look that those leaders gave us as well. And I realized, wow, there are a lot of people who look like me doing great and amazing things. And I was so blessed to have that experience.
Good afternoon. I'm from Bloomfield, Connecticut, and I spent grades 1 through 9 going to Bloomfield Public Schools. And when I was in high school, my freshman year at Bloomfield High, I got suspended for fighting over some food in the cafeteria. And that's true. Knucklehead, just knucklehead, and I took after. I thought it was cool because my oldest brother was in trouble a lot, so I thought, oh, it's not a big deal. Principal suspends me. Fast forward to 2002, I get my first teaching position in East Hartford, Mayberry Elementary School. Principal turns out to be principal from high school that suspended me. Now, I tried to, not bring it up or see if he would recognize the name. All the while, he knew exactly who I was because my older brother had been expelled that same year. And I just thought, he was going to have this preconceived notion of me from high school. And thankfully, that was not the case. And through the 5 years I spent at Mayberry, his name is Leon McKinley, became a mentor and a guide. Not only through navigating the teaching profession, but working at the State Department where I had an opportunity to do an internship for a year because of him. Working at Hartford Public Schools for 4 years because of an opportunity he gave me. So the point being that even when we make mistakes when we're younger, we have those people in our lives who can look past that. Not everybody does, but we have some people who will. And I'm here today as a result of the guidance that he not only gave me back then, but still gives me. We still meet on a weekly basis. We met last Wednesday to just talk about things and talk about the profession and talk about life. And again, this is the guy who suspended me when I was in high school for doing something stupid. And yet I'm on this stage today, and he played a major part in that. And so I thank him for that.
Excellent responses, gentlemen. One good point that was brought up is there are people out there that are willing to help you, to bend over backwards, to go the extra mile, but you need to go out there and you need to seek them out. Let's turn our attention to these promising young gentlemen out here. What skill set is needed for the young men here today to be successful in the diverse, rapidly changing global workforce of the 21st century? We'll start with Desi.
Wow. You started off, one of the first question you talked about culture and how we end up where we are. And part of the thing that I was thinking was as you go through high school, you become a product of your school culture, your home culture, your community culture, and those different environments. And you really have to, along the way, find out who it is that you are and what you want to do. And then commit to that and be a professional, because you're going to have people along the way who will throw up obstacles and roadblocks. And I remember, I'll just give you an example. When I was a junior, I think it was junior year in high school, when I decided I wanted to go to UConn, I turned it around, had straight A's. I got exempt from my final exams because of my GPA. And I still remember, the one thing I remember most about that year is going to my guidance counselor and saying, I'm applying to UConn, the Storrs campus. That's how I met Sherrod up there. And I remember her response was, you're not going to be able to handle that, so I think you need to go to community college. And I never, ever forgot that. And to this day, and I won't mention the high school because I don't want it to reflect on the entire school. I had good experiences with some great teachers, but that is what I remember the most. So along the way, you have to decide who you are as a young man, and then decide what you want to do, and you have to stick to that. Because if you don't, and you're not sure who you are, or you're not sure what you want to do, other people will influence you and negatively influence you. And they will create doubt in your mind that maybe you can't do what you set out to do. And the only person ultimately that can stop that is you. It's up to you whether or not you're going to do what you set out to accomplish. So I think you have to remember, as you find out who you are and what your role is going to be in this society, you have to remember the obstacles are there. The obstacles remain for all of us, even though we're sitting up here. It's not like the obstacles aren't there. They're going to be there for the rest of your life. The decision that you have to make is whether or not you are going to allow those obstacles to stop you.
Absolutely.
Nice.
One skill that I know you'll need is to say yes more than you say no. And what I mean by that is all of the opportunities that were afforded to me, I was terrified of at first. there weren't many where I knew exactly how it was going to go and that I was definitely going to succeed and that on the other end, everything would be great. Most I was terrified of. But my mother would tell me, Derek, you don't want to live your life constantly saying no to things. Can you do? No. Do you want to go? No. Can you? No. Why don't you read? No. Right? I said yes. And those yeses opened up so many doors for me. Like I said, in Hartford, I didn't see like a lot of public speakers, besides, what Ms. Thornton kind of opened our eyes to. But I decided that I really wanted to do something with my voice. I wanted to make sure that my ideas got out there. And so I went to college. I went to Central Connecticut State, where I studied English. And then there was an opportunity to write a curriculum for a school in Connecticut that basically only put, a couple pictures of some black folks on the wall and said, yay, we just did Black History Month. That wasn't good enough for me because I know how important Black History Month actually is. And so I created a curriculum. I wrote it, I brought it to this school. It was a predominantly white school. And I said, I really think that you should implement this here. And they said yes. They felt my passion and said, you know what? Yeah, I think we should, and I think you should lead us out. And so here I was in college with a principal of a school saying, you should teach this curriculum too. We will make the students available to you, but you are going to need to teach them. And I was terrified, and I said, yes, I will do it. I found a way to make it happen. Was it perfect my first time out? Absolutely not, but I kept at it. From there, I was kind of picked up. The news, it was a small town, so it was a kind of a big deal that this was changing. And so I got into their newspaper. And the newspaper, people were like, hey, can we take some pictures? I was terrified. I said yes. And I answered the questions that they had. From there, a young woman who was working with the ADL saw this in the newspaper and came out to see what was going on in her community, and she was impressed. So she asked me, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And I said, yes. And then from that conversation, she told me, oh, they're having an open casting for trainers at the ADL. What is the ADL? She told me a little bit about it. I Googled it, as I do most things. And she said, will you go if I tell them that you're to reach out to you? And I said yes. I went. I was trained by the ADL in diversity and transformative dialogue. And the ADL asked me, do you want to go and talk to 500 kids about how important multiculturalism and diversity is? I was terrified. I said yes. Those yeses have led me right here directly to this stage. And when I think about mentoring that I've done to young men like yourselves, I think sometimes because of where we come from, because of the streets that we come from, because of some of the negative examples that we see, we say no. I can't, I won't, it's too hard, I don't want to be responsible for. You shy away from that light. I want y'all to lean into those experiences that seem a little bit scary, because those are where I think you learn the most.
I was going to say something else, but I'm going to back up to your teacher that busted on community colleges. What was that all about? That's where I teach. I've been teaching there for over 20 years. I need to say this, and not because that teacher didn't understand how important community colleges are. If you had asked me when they first asked me to take a job at a community college, would I rather teach at a private academic academy, that was kind of an Ivy League thing as opposed to community college, I might have said yes. But for my first classroom, when I was sitting with my students and they were like on it, they were serious. And I've been to Yale. I've been a Yale Mellon Fellow. I put the best of my students against the best of theirs any day of the week and twice on Sunday because they are serious. And that's what I love about them. Many of them the first in their family to go to college. Serious about their careers. Serious about going on to a four-year institution. Serious about getting a certificate. Serious about giving up something in the class. And believe me, as my mentors did for me, I do for them. I stand for them, I stand with them. But I do work them to death. And that proves how much I care about where you're going to go. Because just like your former teacher used to say, there are still people who denigrate community colleges. Oh, what's a waste of time. I'm walking on the staircase one time. I'm glad I didn't speak to the young man. He's telling somebody else who had just gotten there, what's this like? Oh, is this like extended high school? Not in my classroom. I got a little surprise for him, but I'll see him again. But this is how it goes. If anybody tells you you are less than, you need to be more than, and show them that you're more than. I have a speech I give every orientation session for my college. I do it gladly. And I say, the first time somebody underestimates you, this is what you say. Excuse me, you seem to be suffering under delusion. You are of the impression that somehow because my education did not cost as much as yours, it is somehow less than. That is erroneous. I am by far one of the best students you will ever have. And thank you for your time. Like this brother here, I do love the English language, and I work it as much as I can. If somebody had seen me coming from where I come from, my neighborhood, and see me talking now, oh, what happened to you? I got smart. And that was always the way to go, okay? You'll hear, among my students, I joke with them a lot, but I always have a serious purpose. I said, you can, whenever you get some education, whenever you get something that somebody around you is jealous of, they will make you feel that you are not doing the right thing. You are no longer a part of us. How could you not be? You didn't change where you were born. You didn't change where you grew up. You are absolutely a part of them. You're just going in a different direction. And notice the word different. I didn't say better or worse, just different. And if you can learn that perspective, that's what we teach in diversity training. If I'm right, then somebody else must be wrong. No, somebody else is just different. If you do that twist inside your head, you're going to shoot to the moon. You're going to go as far as you possibly can. As he said, don't be afraid to stand out. Don't be afraid to take a risk. You never know where it'll land. I got taken from Philadelphia, deep West Philadelphia, dark West Philadelphia, to almost almond inside color Amherst, Massachusetts, where I was like one of 20 black students in a high school of 700. Ask me at the end of those 3 years, did they not know my name? Because I decided that if I'm going to be here, no one knows what I was like beforehand, knucklehead. I can be a star, and I did. I got into drama, I got into athletics, I got into student government, I got into the newspaper. They had a TV station, and we had a chance to get on the air once a week. I did plays. I enjoyed myself, and I was still an academic star. Because I had a chance to I saw I could run as fast as I possibly can, as far as I possibly can. I took it. I invite you to do the same. The opportunities are here, okay? I was in China in 2007. For me as a professor, that was a big deal. There was a bunch of high school students from Chicago there. I couldn't imagine that. I said, they're getting something at an earlier age than I ever got it. And I'm just proud to, because I was walking through the streets of Shanghai, and I heard something, wait a minute, did I hear some young black folks talking? I turned around, and they were like, it was like no big deal to them. It was like, yeah, we deserve this. Go ahead for it, young folks. I ain't mad at you, okay? Be all you can be. And for the people who want to hold you back and hold them down, just look at them and feel sorry for them because they could take the same opportunity you can, okay? You are smarter than you ever know. And that's what my family told me, and I tell it to my kids, and my community college students, I tell it to them as well. Show me the best you've got. I'll be behind you 100%.
Wonderful responses, gentlemen. One last question for you. In a recent NBC News conference, Secretary of Education Arne Duncan noted, "We want to have world-class teachers in every classroom. Yet there is nothing more important for me that these teachers reflect the diversity of our nation. You can go too many schools across our nation and still not see a teacher of color. When you look at a black male and a Hispanic male teacher, the number is basically less than 2%. What do we need to do to improve the high school experience with regard to this issue?" We'll start with Derek.
One of the things that immediately comes to mind for me is I had a really good friend in high school, and he was super intelligent. His name was Antoine, and Antoine was really, really smart, and Antoine wanted to get as far away from, as he called it, the hood as possible. His goal in life was to get as far away from where he came from as possible. And now, I think about Antoine as I've kind of gone out into the world and then come back to Hartford, because I think it's so important that we go out and we learn about the world, but we bring that back to the communities that grew us. that we come back to the communities that gave us those real, like honestly, when I'm sitting in, rooms filled with, academic, white people, and I'm a minority in the room, what makes me kind of sit up straight, what makes me comfortable with being in those spaces were conversations that I had with my grandmother, were, things that we talked about on a basketball court, lessons that I learned while in those public schools that people saw as dilapidated and where you would never get an education and you would never be anything. It is those lessons that allow me to sit back, and then I kind of marry that experience to, the education, the wonderful education I've received. So, my message to you all is when we look at our schools and say, wow, why are there no young men of color here? I think it often is because we decide we need to get as far away from where we came from physically as possible. And I really want y'all to go out into the world, do amazing things, and then come back and build up your hood, build up where you came from. Go back to that school that you was in and mentor some kids. Become a teacher in a school system that gave you the beginnings of what will become a wonderful life.
To be direct, I don't think we do a good job of valuing the profession. Oftentimes when you turn on a television, we see negative stories about schools, negative stories about test scores, negative stories about teachers or parents or whatever. The positive stories are few and far between. I also don't think we do a good job in giving you all opportunities to take those mentor roles at the age that you are now. So how many of you have the opportunity to go down to the middle school in your district or the elementary school in your district and work with some of those kids, to test it out, to see how it feels, to sort of try it on, being a mentor, working with a younger student at reading, writing, or math, or whatever? We don't do a good job of giving you those opportunities. And so by the time you leave high school, go to college, you already kind of have an idea of what you want to do, and very few people say, you know what, I want to be an educator. Because we don't talk about it, we don't value it. Oftentimes, we've gone through high school having negative experiences that shape who we are. We allow those experiences to shape who we are, and we decide once we get out, we don't ever want to go back. Why would we want to become the thing that was negative? Why do we want to do that? And it's so much more than that. When you have the opportunity to work with kids and somebody younger, and you see the impact that you can have, that's one of the things I love being an elementary school principal. Never in a million years planned to do it. I wanted to teach, just like my dad. 34 years in the classroom, room 11 at Mayberry. That's what I was going to do. And it was through opportunities, and like he said, saying yes, especially when you're afraid to step outside of your comfort zone, that's when opportunities and doors started to open for me. So now I have an elementary school. I've got almost 300 kids that I can play that mentor role. I want them to see someone that looks like them. I want them to say, you know what, I want to do that. I was in a classroom this morning before I came over, and we have a weekly reward drawing for kids. And one of the rewards that the third grade class I was in, they said, we want to be principal for a day. Now this is third and fourth grade. So somewhere along the line, we lose that interest because we don't talk about it and we don't give you those opportunities to work with younger kids. And so to go back to that original question, I think we need to do more, but we have to look for those opportunities where we are now and sort of take it for a test run and see how you like it. But don't knock it and don't put it off to the side, because I will tell you, and Sherrod and I, we're a year apart up at UConn. A lot of our friends got all these degrees, fancy sounding degrees too. I would think, wow, you're gonna be rich one day. You know what they're doing? Substitute teaching. That's the truth. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. So don't knock the profession. If you're interested, stay interested. And if you're not, take a hard look at it and think about it. Not saying that you have to do it, but don't take it off your list until you at least check it out.
Thank you. When you think about education, you can think about the schoolhouse, but you can also think about other places too. Everyone here has something you do really well. There's no reason at a community center, at a church, things they have at the... There are programs that go on at convention centers where they promote us. I don't know if they still do Black Expo in Hartford, but I know they do it in New Haven. And I'm there every year. Something I did not tell you, and we didn't have enough time to talk about in my credentials, is I am a comic book historian. I am one of the premier comic book historians that specializes in the image of African Americans. So I'm always trying to find our face in something, and I'm always taking presentations. Later this month, I'm doing a Skype with a school in North Carolina, talking to the kids about Black comic books. All the kids, because everybody needs to hear what we do. I am fortunate. I didn't think so at the time. My mother was very big in the Black church. So here's the bad side. Philadelphia had like 3 million people when I was growing up there, okay? I couldn't go anywhere without somebody recognizing me. Yeah, if I was doing something, y'all know what I'm talking about. So, aren't you Gladys Gordon's boy? Jeez. Now they saw me. Now I knew my mother was going to get a phone call. I know somebody in my family was going to be talking about it. So that kind of kept me on the straight and narrow. But at the same token, I had all these people who knew what I was and would promote me. And I was in Bible school, summer Bible school. I was the first president of our Baptist training union. Those things, if you are in the church, they make you stand up immediately. You're 4 years old. Stand up and sing that song. Jesus loves me. Okay, so any fear you have goes away real quick. Okay, Aretha Franklin, who I'm reasonably certain you all know, and she started off in her father's church. When she was so small, she had to stand on his chair to reach the microphone. There's so many places where lessons and education takes place in here. There's a story that goes around from people from the South that says, if you think about all the people who became great, what do you think that started with? They started with them at their parents' table, and that started at their grandparents' table, where somebody was telling you about a story they went through and how they survived, and you got a lesson even though you didn't think you were getting one. So don't let anybody tell you that education is like a waste of your time. I came to education after 20 years working in business. I was thrilled to get there. And from the very first time I started having fun. I tell my students I'm having fun all the time. The more they cry about how much homework I give them, the more I laugh. I said, and one day, when you have to answer this question when somebody else doesn't, you'll thank me. I don't expect to hear back from you, but you will thank me, okay? And that's exactly what I'm there for. I am there for your education and your edification, okay? To expand your intellect, to expand the possibilities of the world. This room has possibilities you've not even thought of. Someone in this room could be thinking about a solution to anti-gravity. Someone in this room could be thinking about an economic system where we don't have to use money. You know what that means? No more poor people. No more poor. Someone in this room is going to change the face of the earth. I am sure of it. I'm not even making that up. Because that's the way the world goes. And what happens if you don't have an opportunity to develop that intellect, develop that interest, develop that creativity, okay? I was kidding with my buddy about the song Happy, because I said, he looks just like that guy. When I first saw him, I said, hey, I love your new CD. But the idea was, but stop and think about that. That song has revolutionized the world. They sing that everywhere. Go online and see how many different countries, how many different cities, how many different groups are singing that song. He put the song in the mouth of humanity. This one brother did that. And they do not all look like you, but they are all the same as you. That's one of the most exciting things in the world to me. When I see somebody do something that reaches across a divide that you never thought could be reached, that to me is why we are here. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. Just curious, how many people here in the audience have thought about going into teaching? Raise your hand.
Honestly.
Gotta love the honesty.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, we're just out of questions for our panelists. Give them a round of applause. We do have a little bit of time left. I see Mr. Maloney coming over.
Yes, that's great.
Does anyone have any questions for our panelists?
Please.
I see one in the back.
Yep, there's a hand back there. There's a hand over here as well. Yeah. Don't
right.
be stretching. This ain't the time to stretch.
We have a hand in the back.
Why is it that every question you guys got asked, it seemed you didn't answer the actual topic?
Tell me more about that. Tell me more about what you think.
They said school is a mirror and a window for us to see life, but you guys, all you talked about was your mentors that helped you.
Okay, so when you hear that school should be a mirror, what does that mean to you? What did you want to hear?
That it's a lie.
Tell me why.
School doesn't teach you anything about life.
Really?
By a show of hands, how many people would agree with that? By a show of hands.
Oh, this is gonna be good. How much time we got?
Let's do it. That's what I love. All right. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I mean, you want some examples? I can keep going.
No. I got an idea for you. Let me give you examples because at one point I thought the exact same thing.
Yep. We listened and we heard that. So let's make sure that we listen up here and we get a good response.
It taught me about socialization. It taught me about how to get along with people. I tell my students at community college that there's a secret that most of you guys should know. If you think this class is about English or you think it's about communications, or I also teach self-defense, I said if you think it's about that, it's not. It's to see how well you operate in a system, to give you your skills so no matter what system you go to, you can operate effectively. If you think that just being by yourself, sitting in your room is going to teach you about how long to get along with people, you are mistaken. And thank you for reminding me because I'm remembering an occasion, wasn't anybody in here, I went to a fast food place. Afternoon, I wasn't even ordering, I was with a friend. It was shift change time. Y'all don't know what time that is. And some young girl came in, and the brother who was the manager who was like dying, he was trying to do 2 and 3 things at a time, and she comes in late. And he said, oh, I'm glad to see you, take the window. I'm not taking no window. You don't want a job. You haven't learned any socialization skills. You haven't learned how to get along with people. You sure didn't learn about a chain of command. Somehow you feel that was owed to you. Where's my money? Is that how you think? Then you are mistaken unless you're going to work for yourself. And even if you work for yourself, you got to work with suppliers, you got to work with vendors, okay? It's a hard world. And if you haven't learned the skills to get through that, school can teach you that. If you don't want to learn it there, it doesn't matter what they can teach you. I was just like you. What am I going to need math for? I don't need to learn no algebra. First time you need it and don't have it, you're going to be in trouble. And that's what school's about. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And just to put this on a broader context, and I grew up in Philadelphia. Benjamin Franklin is revered in Philadelphia. He had a quote. He said, empty the coins from your purse into your head, and your head will refill your purse overflowing. Oh, now let me y'all start to answer another question. I'm sorry about that.
Desi, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I hear you. One of the things that I think we need to remember is that when we walk in the room, because of how we look, people are going to make a judgment long before we open our mouths.
Talk about it.
And one of the things school teaches us is, like you said, how to get along with people, how to work with people, but we also have to have an expectation of ourselves, that we aren't going to fall into that perception that people have of us. Because as soon as you walk in a room, people make a judgment. Whether it's fair or not, it happens. And it's going to happen in every situation, in a lot of scenarios, the rest of your life. So maybe you have some things that, you know what, you don't feel are relevant. Or maybe you're learning some things that you don't feel that you need. But don't discount it, because what you don't realize until way later is the benefit and how that helps you as you turn into adult in the society that we live in. Because we have to carry ourselves a certain way, because of those prejudged notions and those people who think that they know us and where we came from. Don't let the suits and the ties and all that fool you, because a lot of it, if we're being honest, I went through school with an anger problem, and I had a temper. I still have a temper. And it got me kicked out of school. Even when I left Bloomfield High School, it got me kicked out of school for a week because I was just angry. Not at any particular thing. I was 15, 16, I was just mad all the time. And I didn't learn, there's no cure for that, but I had to learn how to manage that to operate in society as a professional. So don't discount what you're going through now. You may not be able to appreciate it until later, but you will appreciate it.
And I'll be real quick. I run diversity programming, so that gets kids kind of out of their classrooms, out of their desks, around in circles, kind of doing things that they don't typically do in their classrooms. And I had a situation where there were two of us, two brown brothers, who had just decided that they did not care about anything that we were going to do that day, that they did not want to hear anything that we had to say, no matter how much I talked to, pulled to the side, gave special things for them to do. They just wasn't having it. So I kind of got the group doing something. I went over to those two brothers that was, being disruptive, not getting into it. And I said, talk to me, like, what's going on? And one of them said, I don't care about school. I don't want to do this. This is stupid. Like, this is not for me. And I looked at this kid and I looked at him and I said, you know what? I said, with love, I want you to be a part of this process. But if you right now feel like you're not and it's not working for you, I can call my my counterpart and he can come and sit with you and talk to you about this some more. And he said, yeah, go ahead and do that. And so I had him removed. And in that moment, I'll be honest with you, as an educator, right, I always want you in the room. Even if it's hard for you to be in the room, I always want you in the room. But the fact of the matter is, y'all, if you don't put in 100%, if you don't show people that education and you growing as a person is important to you, the world will leave you. It will leave you behind. The only person I want you to succeed, these mentors that are here want you to succeed, your friends and family that are around you want you to succeed, but you have to want it more than all of them. And if you don't, you will get left. So my suggestion is the tough love of it is, if you don't care about your education, don't expect anybody to hand it to you on a silver platter. You gotta get it.
Excuse me, I know our time is short, but I want to say one thing. Over the last 30 years, one of the major concerns in America has been that people of color were going to be left behind as far as technology is concerned. Still a concern right now. How many of y'all got one of these? Let's see you raise your hands now. Okay, this is your key. Yes. This is your invitation. This is your doorway into the education and all the knowledge of the world. I'm not saying stay off social media. Have an appreciation that there's some other uses for this that can help you stay on top of the game. Because if you make yourself invaluable wherever you go, people will cut their own throats when they fire you because they need you.
Mm-hmm. You are necessary.
Absolutely.
We have a question here in the front.
Oh. We're in the back. Well,
okay, hello, my name is Ricardo Charles and from the Military Academy.
Yes,
and I wanted to know what Desmond was talking about. He said that at third grade, kids were talking about being a principal, but I was wondering how, because some teachers along the line where he was talking about how we lose the interest, some teachers abuse their power of being a teacher in a way that would allow kids to dislike them and dislike the way the school is run. So I believe if we could make teachers appreciate how us kids are trying and make teachers understand that kids don't always get what they're teaching and need a little bit more time. And I think if the teachers would understand that, which they do to a certain extent, and I believe they fully comprehended that, they would have the ability to make the kids enjoy the school much better.
Absolutely. Yeah. How do you make kids like school?
So I think some teachers do, but everybody in this room knows some teachers don't. And we're not always honest about that. Just like in every profession, there's a couple bad apples. One of the things that the rules that govern our school as adults and the teachers who work with kids is very basic. I have the same rule I have for all my teachers that I have for parents and communities. You treat our students the way you would want somebody to treat your child. That's it. If we follow that one simple rule of trying to engage our students, trying to engage you, the way we would want somebody to engage our own children, and I have two. If we all lived by that standard in this profession, that question would be irrelevant. But we know that it's not. And so the question becomes, when we have those teachers, what do we do about it? Because kids, even at the age that I work with, it's like they have built-in lie detectors. Kids know whether or not you care about them. And as we get older, as students, that doesn't go away. You know the teachers who genuinely care about you and your education, and the ones who could give a damn. We all know that. The key is, like I mentioned to you earlier, to not let negative people influence you so much that you turn it off. Because once you turn it off, like he said, once you turn it off, you don't have anybody else to blame. They've won. You've given up. So when you're an adult looking back, don't blame your teacher, don't blame your parent, blame yourself. You have to be strong enough as a young man to decide that you are not going to let somebody influence you to the point where you're ready to throw in the towel. And that doesn't mean some years aren't going to be harder than others. That means overall, you cannot give anybody the power to make you give up.
Young brother, I see your hand in the back. I think they want us to get off the stage, but we will be available if you want to come up and catch us.
For sure.
Solid?
Is that not good?
That's why we're here.
I don't know.
All right, this has been a wonderful dialogue. I want to thank all who had questions. I want to thank our panelists. I wish we had more time, but I do want to offer our panelists one final word before we end the session. We'll start with Professor Foster.
Fair enough. I'm remembering, Bernie Mac did a routine about this when your mama come up to school. When my mother came up to school, I knew I was in a world of trouble. And all the other kids, that would be their time to make fun of me. You're gonna get it. But my mother would never allow me to use the excuse that I didn't like a teacher to fail a class. It was never good enough. If my students now ask me a question and I answer it, I don't understand, I'll try to explain it another way. Because you learn differently. Everyone in here learns differently. My job as a teacher to try to be creative enough to reach you one way or the other. If we can't do it during class time, then come see me after class. If you say you can't come, how interested are you in getting the material? We always have to make a decision between folks who genuinely want to get something and somebody who was like me as a kid, who was just a wise guy and would say stuff to waste your time. My first impression is you want the material, so let me work as hard as I can to give it to you. Does that mean I'm guaranteeing you an A? I love it when people think that. No, but the idea is I'm going to make sure that you perform to your top potential. So please, don't give up on the system, because it owes you. System owes you.
Derek?
Right quick. I do some community organizing work in Hartford around the Black Lives Matter movement. Are y'all familiar? Raise your hand if you're familiar with the Black Lives Matter movement, if you've heard of it. Okay, so to end police brutality in our communities as it affects young men of color like yourselves. When I walked into this room today, can I just have the people that are passing out papers, I need y'all to pause, because people are always sidetracked by people passing out papers, so just hold it for me. I appreciate it. So when I walked into this room today and I looked at the amount of young black men in this room, it was so important to me that you all be here and that you all know how valuable and important your perspective is. And I sat and I realized that the reason why it was so important to me was because when I'm often sitting around tables and we're talking about ways of making sure that you are not devalued in this society, in this country, I can't see your eyes. I can imagine you, I can imagine your stories, I can imagine where you come from, but I can't see it. But to see y'all right now is what will push me and propel me forward. And I want y'all to know there are people like me all across the country who are working very hard for you, so work real hard for me. Work real hard. When you're in school, focus on getting that education. And I mean all parts, the social parts, the academic parts, all of it. Get it all. Because when I'm advocating for you and I'm telling people that you're worthwhile, I want you to be able to stand up and say, I'm more worthwhile even than he said. And that is on your shoulders. So I want you to leave here today knowing that you are incredibly important, and I will fight to the death for your value. You need to step up and do the same thing with me.
Desi?
We talked a little bit earlier about being where we are because of people who helped us. And I think that you can't say it enough that once you get to a certain point, you have to turn around and help the next person. And our responsibility being up here, doing what we do in our profession, is to pave the way for you all. Because it'll be you who are up here one day. And so for those of you who raised your hand thinking about education, for those of you who didn't, think about your brothers or sisters who are younger than you. And think about the type of teachers that, even though you may feel that you didn't have, that you would want your younger brother or sister to have. And think about the profession. And at least look into it and become the person you feel you didn't have in the classroom. Because it's one thing to complain about it, and you may have very valid complaints, but it's another thing to do something about it. So think about becoming the person that you wanted to have, and think about the number of people you can affect.
Once again, we'd like to thank everyone in the audience. You've been a wonderful, wonderful audience. Give yourselves a round of applause.